right? So this is relative ability, and you can see here there's a lot of overlap. So here's a better way of thinking about this. This is women who believe that they're the best at their task, and women who believe that they're the worst at their task within their group, right? And so this belief about how good they are is completely explaining who's running and who's not for any actual value of their score. For men, right, the people who believe that they're best at the task and people who believe that they're worst at the task, there's really no difference, right? So in other words, if I'm making a 25 and I'm a man, right, I'm going to be pretty likely to run. And I'm going to be pretty likely to run if I think that 25 makes me the best person in my group, or if I think that 25 is going to make me the worst person in my group. You can think about this. One is what we can call traits, and one is what we can call approaches. So let's dig into these and see what we mean by this. A trait is an immutable characteristic, right? It's something about you that, and I'm going to ignore the entire question of whether these characteristics are biological or if they're learned characteristics from society, but there's something about you that makes you more or less willing to run for office. So to give you an example, one of the things that we know is that there are gender differences in willingness to take risks. Men are generally more risk acceptant than women are. So it could be that running for elections is simply a question of being willing to take risks, right? And if men have the risk accepted trait, and that trait is associated with willingness to run for office, that would explain our gender difference, right? The other way that it could be, though, is within approaches, right? So if this were true, attitudes toward risk are tied to willingness to run for office, but they're tied to it in ways that are different for men and women. Right? So men don't see this as a risky situation, and women do. Right? And so if women see it as a risky situation, they may be less likely to run. And it's important to remember that that's going to be true even if there's no difference in risk acceptance. Right? If women are thinking about risk in a way that's different from how men are thinking about it. So those are the two ways to think about this. Do men and women differ on traits, or do they differ on approaches?
So yeah, what we really found was that there are gender differences in willingness to run for office that don't have anything to do with outside issues like, how much access to money they have or anything like that. If you completely level the playing field, men are more likely to run for women than women are, and that it has to do with their ideas about how able they are. So women will run only if they think they're the best, and men run if they think they're pretty good.
So one of the things that we're interested in studying is looking at if there are differences in places where there are more women representatives, right? So I would love to. Like my dream is to go to New Zealand, where there are lots of women representatives, and there have been for years. And an even better place to go is actually Rwanda, which is the only legislature that's 50% women. But New Zealand's nicer. So I don't know, but I bet they would make a difference. And I also suspect that institutions would make a difference. It probably would, yeah, and it's already having an effect. And so one of the things that we're seeing, I was just talking about this earlier, is campaign contributions. So typically, individual campaign donors are almost entirely men. The percentage is about 4%. So 4% of people who make campaign contributions are women. In two sort of so candidates have to file these. Release these data on who's giving them money. And 2 times ago, we haven't seen the latest data yet, but for Hillary Clinton's, and she brought this up in the last debate, it was 60% women, which is like, I mean, a huge difference. So that's, I'm looking into that right now to see what that actually means. So Hillary Clinton is already increasing women's involvement in politics.